Hi everyone, today, we're going to take a look at the 5 best lenses for Sony A6000 on the market for this year. First, we're going to show you our 5 best picks, then we'll talk about what you should look for before buying a best lens for Sony A6000. You can find timestamps and links to all the products we mention in this video down in the description below. Let's get started. The best lenses for Sony A6000 cameras will help you to expand the possibilities of your camera. A new Sony A6000 series camera like the Sony A6600 opens a new tab, will likely come bundled with a kit lens. This is okay for when you start taking photos, but soon you might want a wider zoom range, a faster aperture, better image quality, or all three. The best lenses for Sony A6000 come in different sizes, including standard zoom lenses, wide angles, telephotos, and prime lenses. You'll find a range in this guide, and we've tested and reviewed almost every lens so that you can be sure our recommendations are accurate. Find out more about how we test at the bottom of the guide. If you want to find the best lenses for the Sony Alpha A6000 camera, you've come to the right place. Our pick for the best lens for the Sony A6000 is the Sigma 24-70mm f/2.8D GDN art lens. It's got everything you'd expect in a pro-level Sony lens, but at a cost anyone can afford. What's not to love? Number 5. Sony FE16-35mm lens for Sony A6000. The best landscape lens for Sony Alpha A6000 is easily the Sony FE16-35mm f/2.8 GM lens. Here's why. Wide-angle photography is becoming increasingly popular. You can access such fantastic photography styles as landscape, astrophotography, and even interior and architectural photography. The sky, quite literally, is the limit when it comes to wide-angle photography. The Sony FE16-35mm lens is going to open up all of those styles for you. This lens has a few tricks up its sleeve. When you pair this lens with the Sony A6000, the 11-bladed diaphragm of this lens actually makes it a powerful portrait lens. If you stick to the 35mm top end, this lens is also great for videography and street photography. That's a lot of versatility packed into a single lens. Yes, you won't be able to zoom in to do wildlife photography or sports photography, but you will have access to the vast majority of styles in a single package. This also comes from Sony's high-end lenses. These are the best of the best when it comes to shooting on mirrorless. This means that this is a weather-sealed lens. It can stand up to shooting in the outdoors, which is great if you're interested in landscapes and nature to begin with. One of the first things that we need to talk about is that a prime lens might be better when it comes to wide-angle photography. It really all depends on what you are going after. Number 4. Sony SAL85 f18-85mm lens for Sony A6000. The Sony FE85mm f/1.8 is one of the best Sony lenses for portraits and the best 85mm lens available for this camera. It's honestly incredibly easy to go through all the positives of this lens. If taking portraits is one of your favorite activities, this is the lens that you've been waiting for. The first thing we need to do is to look inside this lens and see what makes it so good for portraits. The double linear AF motor allows it to quickly and silently snap into focus. This is almost mandatory when you're working with portraiture models who don't need to be disturbed by the sound of a lens focusing. This lens also has a 9-blade diaphragm and plenty of coatings and optical elements to reduce any distortion. This is especially important when it comes to portraits because you want to take the cleanest pictures possible. This lens is also weather sealed. Honestly, being weather sealed is one of the most important things that you can have for a portrait lens. This means that you can get outdoors with your portraits without worrying so much about your lens taking damage by dust or light rain. This is also the best macro lens for Sony A6000 cameras, but you need to get a little crafty. You'll either need a macro extension or just a quick trick. Number 3. Sony FE35mm lens for Sony A6000. There's hardly anything to dislike about the Sony FE35mm f/1.4 GM. It's one of the best lenses for Sony A6000 and it's easily the best 35mm prime for this camera. The Sony FE35mm lens is just about perfect when it comes to a 35mm prime lens for a mirrorless camera system. Really, we scratched our heads to find problems with this lens and it was hard to come up with a few that we did. This is also the best lens for Sony A6000 for night photography. That at 1-point forward aperture is going to be bright enough to handle just about anything that you can throw at it. You are safe as can be taking this lens to a wedding, a party, or even trying your hand at some interesting astrophotography. There is essentially no dimly lit situation that can't be overcome with this bright of an aperture. That aperture is also going to give you some great bokeh. People don't tend to think about 35mm lenses as a good option for portraits, but they really are. You'll get some classic, cinematic-looking portraits with his lens. This also means it's a great lens for video. As long as you're okay with always shooting wide or having to zoom with your feet, this lens gives you some pretty strong choices when it comes to video. We should talk about the two big claws when it comes to the Sony FE35mm lens. Number 2. Tamron 70 to 180mm lens for Sony A6000. If you want the best budget zoom lens for the Sony A6000, you're going to need to look outside of the Sony brand. The Tamron 70 to 180mm f/2.8D3 VXD is not only one of the best zoom lenses for Sony A6000, and it's also one of the most affordable. There's very little to dislike when it comes to this telephoto lens. It's perfect for using on the crop sensor camera and it delivers an extra punch when it comes to telephoto photography. This lens is a great choice if you're looking to take pictures of sports games or you're looking to venture outdoors. This could also be the best wildlife lens for Sony A6000 cameras, especially on the crop sensor. This means you can explore the potential of taking stellar pics of your local birds to the wildlife on your next safari vacation. Tamron makes some of the best third-party lenses out there. You'll find all over the optical coatings, elements, and features you'd expect on Sony's GM line of lenses. Not everything is perfect when it comes to our pick for one of the best telephoto lenses for the Sony A6000. The first thing that we need to deal with is a recurring problem when you shoot on a crop sensor camera. The crop sensor format naturally magnifies the focal length of any lens you use. This means that things are going to be much more zoomed in than they would be on a full-sized sensor. Number 1. Sigma 24 to 70mm lens for Sony A6000. Our pick for the best all-rounder lens for Sony A6000 cameras is the Sigma 24 to 70mm f/2.8D GDN art lens. It's got everything you need no matter what style of photography you're into. Let's check out what makes this lens so good. The best all-around lens for Sony A6000 cameras comes packed with features. Sigma put their all into their art lenses. This means that this lens has dust and is weather sealed just like you'd expect from a high-end Sony lens. It's also got multiple optical elements which will help to remove distortion, chromatic aberrations, and other problems in your photographs. The focal length of this lens is also ideal for pretty much every style. Pull things back to the widest angle for landscape and astrophotography, or get nice and tight for your basic wildlife and sports photography. This lens from Sigma really does have it all. There are also features here that plenty of Sony lenses would be jealous of. The lens has an 11-bladed diaphragm, which is outstanding for delivering buttery smooth bokeh. Sigma also decided to add several coatings to this lens to make sure that it can stand up to regular use. These will help protect the glass elements as well as keep the lens safer from dust and light scratches. Of course, our pick for the best third-party lens for Sony A6000 cameras does have a few flaws, but they might not be what you'd expect.